A quiet city morning turns deadly when a body is found high above the streets, resting on the edge of a rooftop as if placed there on purpose. No one saw who did it. No one heard a sound. But something strange moves through the cold air, a clue that doesn't belong. A clue carried from above. As detectives rush to the scene, only one thing is clear. This crime wasn't meant to be discovered. And the only witness may not even be human. The sun had barely risen when the call came in, and the city below still looked half asleep. But on the top floor of a tall building, everything felt wrong. A man lay motionless near the balcony railing, his body positioned too neatly for an accident. The wind pushed gently against his coat, but nothing else around him showed signs of a struggle. It was the kind of silence that felt staged, as if the truth had been wiped clean before anyone arrived. A soft echo of footsteps spread across the rooftop as the investigators approached. The glass of the balcony reflected the sky, but not a single fingerprint smudged its surface. The victim's phone was in his pocket, untouched, and his watch still ticking, like time had refused to stop for him. Even the smallest detail felt out of place, but none of it explained how a man ended up dead with no mark of violence. The air carried an odd scent, sharp and out of rhythm with the city breeze. It drifted around the rooftop in shifting waves, almost too faint to notice, but impossible to ignore, one sensed. Something had been here, something alive, something moving, and whatever it was had left just before help arrived. The investigators exchanged quiet glances, unsure if they were dealing with a simple fall or something far more complex. As they examined the surroundings, they discovered the security camera mounted above the rooftop door. Its red light was off, its wires cut cleanly, as though someone had planned the crime down to the last second. No alarms had been triggered. No forced entry was visible. Everything felt too controlled, too careful. Whoever did this didn't want to be caught. And they knew exactly what they were doing. Far below, the streets continued with their usual morning chaos, unaware of the mystery unfolding above. Cars moved, people walked, conversations rose and fell. But none of them could imagine the layers of secrets hidden on this quiet rooftop. The victim had lived a private life, no known enemies, no known dangers. Yet here he was, arranged like a final message no one could read. One of the investigators knelt beside the body, noticing a slight tilt to the man's head, as if he had been watching something right before the end. His eyes were half open, reflecting a faint trace of fear or surprise. The positioning felt too deliberate. If someone had pushed him, the body would show signs of impact. If he had fallen, his injuries would tell a different story. But there was none of that. Only stillness, as if he had been placed here after death. A sudden gust swept across the rooftop, carrying with it a fluttering sound that vanished before anyone could pinpoint it. It echoed like wings, quick and light, then gone. The moment was so brief that it felt imagined, but it left behind a chill that crawled across the skin. Something had been watching. Something had flown away. And the rooftop no longer felt like a simple crime scene. It felt like the start of a puzzle, built far above ground level. As the investigators stood in silence, piecing together the first clues, it became clear that this death wasn't an accident or a moment of panic. It was a message, a warning, and its sender had escaped before dawn broke over the skyline. The truth was still out there, drifting somewhere between the rooftops and the rising sky. The investigation grew heavier as the morning brightened. And every shadow felt like it was hiding something. The rooftop had no clear answers, but it had a feeling, an uneasy one, that kept tugging at the investigators' thoughts. Nothing about the man's death followed a normal pattern, and that made every small detail worth examining. As they continued their search, a young officer hurried up the stairs carrying a tablet with shaky hands. He explained that someone from a nearby building had spotted a strange drone drifting above the area shortly before the body was discovered. The witness had recorded it, unsure whether it was important. But something about the timing made it worth checking. The tablet displayed a blurry video, recorded from a balcony across the street. At first it looked like any other drone flight, a small shape gliding through the air with a steady mechanical hum. But as the video zoomed in, the drone appeared to jerk suddenly, as if reacting to something unseen. A dark shadow moved near it, quick and sharp, and then vanished before the camera could focus. Right after that strange movement, the drone tilted sideways and flew off in a rush, almost as though it had been startled by something unexpected. The investigators stared at the screen, drawn in by the brief, mysterious shape. It didn't look like a person, and it didn't move like a machine. It moved with an unpredictable rhythm, something alive. The witness had assumed it was just a bird. But the speed and the angle of the shadow didn't match any bird common to the city. It was too large, too swift, leaving behind a blur that seemed to ripple through the camera lens. The rooftop suddenly felt less like a crime scene and more like the center of an invisible circle. Something had happened above them, something that started in the sky. The more they studied the footage, the more they sensed that the victim wasn't killed in the usual way. Instead, the truth had drifted down from far above, carried by something no one could fully understand yet. One of the investigators suggested enhancing the footage. But even at its sharpest, the shadow refused to reveal its shape. It moved with a strange grace, darting toward the drone and then lifting upward in a split second. A faint fluttering noise was captured by the microphone. Not mechanical, but natural, like wings cutting the air with purpose. The sound felt almost out of place, like it didn't belong to the skyline of tall buildings and busy streets. It felt foreign, as if the rooftop had been visited by something rarely seen. The witness also mentioned hearing a loud, rustling sound moments before the drone sped away. It wasn't the usual flapping of a pigeon or seagull. It was deeper, heavier, beating the air in a way that made the hair on the back of the neck stand up. The investigators replayed the audio several times, letting the strange rhythm tap against their nerves. Whatever the sound was, it wasn't normal for this city. And if it wasn't normal, it might be connected to the victim. The more they examined the video, the more questions formed. Why was the drone flying so close to the rooftop? Was it watching the victim? Or was it recording something else entirely? And who was controlling it? The witness had no answers, claiming the drone seemed to be operating on its own. That detail only added to the mystery. A drone without a clear purpose was suspicious. A drone that crossed paths with an unknown flying shape was even more troubling. As they continued to analyze the footage, a strange idea began to grow among them. What if the victim had seen something he wasn't supposed to? Something delivered from the sky. The neat placement of the body, the silent surroundings, the absence of a fight. All of it hinted at a crime designed to leave no human trace. A soft breeze brushed over the edge of the building again, carrying the same faint scent they had noticed earlier. It danced through the air like a ghost of the truth, reminding them that whatever happened here did not come from the ground. The rooftops were no longer just rooftops. They were the first layer of a story unfolding above their heads. Something had watched the victim. Something had flown past the drone. And whatever that shadow was, it had vanished into the sky before anyone could understand its role in the man's final moments. The investigation had reached a point where normal methods no longer felt enough. Too many clues were drifting just out of reach, and too many questions pointed upward rather than across the ground. As the investigators turned back to examine the rooftop again, the quiet sound of claws tapping lightly against concrete broke the tense silence. Rex stepped forward with sharp focus, lowering his head as he sniffed the air in slow, deliberate breaths. The wind that passed through the rooftop seemed to speak directly to him, carrying small pieces of truth that humans could not sense. His body stiffened, tail raised, and in that instant, everyone realized that Rex had detected something far beyond their understanding. His steps were precise, moving in a direct yet cautious line across the open rooftop. He followed a path invisible to everyone else, pausing now and then to confirm a scent that twisted and faded like smoke. The investigators watched closely, letting Rex take the lead, trusting his instincts more than any camera or tool. Something had been here, something alive. Something fast and, whatever it was, had left. Behind a trail faint enough to confuse people, but strong enough for Rex to follow, he stopped near a narrow section of the rooftop wall where the morning sun cast long shadows. The investigators had walked past this area earlier, paying no special attention to it. But Rex lowered his nose to the ground with a deep inhale, then looked toward the rooftop's far corner. Without waiting for a command, he moved again, this time with more urgency, as if he had discovered a thread that pulled him forward. His movement led them toward a small, rusted maintenance door tucked into the side of the structure. It was the kind of door most people would ignore a simple metal frame. It's locked many years ago, forgotten by everyone except the building's old blueprints. Yet Rex pawed at it lightly, the way he did whenever a trail didn't end but simply passed into another space. They forced the door open, revealing a short, dimly lit corridor filled with dust that seemed untouched for months. But the air told a different story. Something had moved through here recently. Disturbing the stillness, inside the narrow passage, they noticed thin strands of something resting on the ground. At first glance, they looked like pieces of dried leaves or fragile paper blown in by the wind. But when they picked one up, the truth became unmistakable. It was a feather long, smooth, and unlike any feather common to this area. Its color was a deep shade that shifted in the light, almost metallic, as if it belonged to a creature not often seen in this part of the world. And nearby lay more of them, scattered lightly, forming a subtle trail that led deeper into the passage, like breadcrumbs left behind by an unseen visitor. Rex sniffed the feathers with sharp concentration. His ears twitched, and he looked toward the end of the passage. There was something else, a faint smell, foreign and earthy, with a touch of wildness. It wasn't the scent of a city bird or any animal familiar to the investigators. It carried a weight to it, a sense of distance, as if the creature that left it behind belonged to a world far from rooftops and concrete streets. As they reached the far wall, they discovered faint marks on the dusty floor. They were not footprints. They were not shoe marks. They were subtle impressions, curved and spaced perfectly, suggesting that something had landed here, rested briefly, and then taken off again. The investigators exchanged uneasy glances. The shape was too large to belong to a pigeon, too unusual to match a hawk. It was something else, something trained, something controlled. Rex continued his search, circling the area with growing intensity. Suddenly, he stopped and nudged a small metallic object half buried under the dust. The object was smooth, light, and shaped like a small clasp. Its surface held tiny scratches, and one side bore a faint imprint like the grip of a talon. The moment they lifted it, another piece of the puzzle slid quietly into place. Whatever creature had been here was not wild. It had been equipped with something, used for something, guided toward something. The investigators felt the weight of this realization settle over them. They hadn't just stumbled onto random clues. They had found the traces of a trained animal, one powerful enough to move through the sky with speed and accuracy. Someone had used it, someone had given it purpose, and that purpose had led it straight to the rooftop where the victim died. Rex sat beside them, watching their reactions, calm but alert. His eyes seemed to say what none of them could speak yet. The truth of this case did not rest on the ground. It was carried by wings, hidden in the sky, and waiting for them to look higher than they ever had before. The deeper the investigators went into this strange rooftop discovery, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary case. A death without signs of violence, a drone caught in the middle of something mysterious. And now the presence of exotic feathers and odd landing marks, it all pointed to a plan crafted with precision. Whoever was behind this had thought ahead, using methods that left almost no human trace. But every secret leaves a shadow somewhere, and slowly those shadows began to take shape. By the time they returned to the main part of the rooftop, the investigation had shifted from confusion to calculated suspicion. They began piecing together the victim's final day, hoping that somewhere in his routine a door to the truth would open. Interviews with neighbors and building staff revealed that the victim lived a quiet, predictable life. But quiet lives sometimes hide the loudest secrets. A neighbor reported seeing a man on the rooftop 2 days before the incidents, someone who didn't live in the building. When questioned, the witness described him as restless, pacing near the edge as if waiting for something to appear in the sky. That small detail instantly raised alarms. People didn't go to rooftops to think anymore. They went there to hide or to watch. Another lead emerged when the investigators checked the building's visitor logs. A drone hobbyist living a block away had been warned several times for flying his drone too close to residential areas. He had a history of ignoring rules and posting risky footage online. His name appeared in a few complaints filed by local residents, including the victim. But when the investigators questioned him, he insisted he had nothing to do with the death. He seemed shocked when shown the recorded drone footage and claimed he lost control of his device the night before. According to him, the drone flew off on its own and never returned. His story was believable enough. Yet the timing made him impossible to dismiss. Then came the strangest lead of all. A local exotic animal smuggler known for trading rare birds. His activities were well hidden, but not well enough to escape the attention of law enforcement. Rumors had circulated for months about a particular bird he owned, large, powerful, highly trained. The kind of bird capable of carrying objects and responding to commands. The feathers found in the maintenance passage matched the description of the species he was suspected of keeping. If the smuggler had used the bird for delivery or distraction, it could easily explain the shadow seen in the drone footage. But motives mattered. And so far, none of the suspects had a clear reason to harm the victim. That changed when the investigators searched the victim's apartment. Inside his desk drawer, they found a small envelope filled with notes about illegal deals happening around the neighborhood. He had been quietly gathering information, recording details, and writing down names he suspected of wrongdoing. Among those names was the exotic animal smuggler. It seemed the victim had been watching him from afar, taking notes that could expose his operations. If the smuggler discovered this, he might have had every reason to silence the victim. Still, there was another person who couldn't be ignored. The victim's closest neighbor, who lived directly below him, had a long history of arguments with him. Their disputes had grown bitter over time, noise complaints, parking issues, even accusations of spying. The neighbor had been seen near the rooftop multiple times, often late at night. And when questioned, he grew defensive and anxious, answering each question with too much detail or not enough. His behavior didn't give the investigators confidence. If jealousy, anger, or revenge played any role in this case, he was more than capable of acting out of sudden rage. But the investigators didn't want assumptions. They wanted patterns. They studied each suspect carefully, comparing motives and opportunities. The drone hobbyist had access, but no clear reason. The smuggler had motive, but denied ever approaching the rooftop. The neighbor had emotional tension, but lacked any connection to the feathers or the drone. And somewhere, floating between all these possibilities, was this strange presence captured in the sky? A creature moving with purpose at the exact moment the victim died. As the list of suspects grew, the investigators realized they were dealing with a puzzle built from separate worlds' technology, jealousy, smuggling, secrecy, and nature itself. Each piece connected not by chance, but by someone's careful design. Someone had planned a crime so unusual that it forced them to look at suspects from every direction. Both grounded and airborne Rex sensed the tension growing and paced slowly along the rooftop's edge, his ears shifting with every passing sound. The case had layers, human layers, hidden layers, and a much darker one hovering just above. The truth was coming into focus, but not fast enough. And the more they studied their suspects, the more they felt that one of them wasn't just connected to the crime, they were watching the investigation unfold, waiting for the moment when the clues aligned and pointed straight at them.